The 7 Cities of Gold. This is one of those milestone games that you really just don't hear much about anymore. Nevertheless, it's still a great game to this very day. In this game, you play a conquistador from Spain looking for adventure, fame, and above all, gold. Upon starting a new game, you have to pick a difficulty level, and we're going to go with Novice because it's much easier. On the other levels, you actually can't see the Indian villages on the map before you discover them, and you have to battle storms and all kinds of other stuff. So when you begin the game, you start with 100 men, 4 ships, 52 weeks of food, and goods that you can use to trade for more food or for gold. So the first thing you're going to do in this game is hit the outfitter, and if you've played Oregon Trail, you kind of know what to expect here. You load up your expedition, and there's a weight limit and stuff like that you have to keep in mind. And then you enter the ship and go on your merry way. And the game makes you sail all the way to the New World. Fortunately, it's not in real time, but it does take a few minutes. If you hated the sailing in Wind Waker, you're not going to like it here. It really does go at about the same pace. And here you see we've finally hit land, and we're going to drop our ship off, drop stuff off. And on this screen, you can split up your expedition, or you can load people and food and goods onto land. And amount of food that's shown here is the number of weeks, I believe, for however many men you selected. So we've discovered a new world, and what we're going to do here is go over and check out that farming village. And in this game, there's not just one kind of tribe. There are several tribes, and some of them are farming. Some of them have more gold. You know, there's Aztecs, Pueblos. It's really neat. And what you do is you go into these screens and you negotiate with them. And it's a strange real-time arcade kind of part, but it really is supposed to simulate communicating with a people through an extreme language barrier, where it's all done through gestures, offering gifts, and other actions. You have to be careful because if you run into the natives, you actually kill them or attack them, and that can ramp up and escalate pretty fast. This might be a good time to mention that 7 Cities of Gold is a game by Ozark Softscape and Dan Bunton, and they were known for making games that were very detailed, but with very simple controls and simulating complex interactions by just moving icons around the screen with a joystick. During these interactions, what you really want to be doing is find the chief in the middle of town. He's the guy with a funny hat, and you talk to him and see if you can get him to trade. And that's where the goods that you brought along come in. You can trade the goods for food or gold, and you have to decide if you're going to be pressing on. You might need to keep your food up, or you can, you know, get all the gold you can carry and go back to the ship, which is what I've done in this case. The villages all have different temperaments, and sometimes it's really hard to prevent a fight from breaking out. And true to the history of the conquistadors, you can also take what you want by force. Now, while taking villages by force can make you filthy rich, like here where I'm just stocking up on all their gold, doing business this way does have consequences. For example, it makes you more prone to being ambushed. Every so often, you return home to drop off your gold and get told that you suck. Seriously, no matter what I do in this game, I'm told that my rating is poor. One thing you can do too in this game is you can convert the natives, and when that happens, they let you build a mission where their village used to be. And you do that by, you know, bringing enough men to stock the village, and you have to give them plenty of food. So many times in this game, I made a mission or a fort, didn't leave them enough food, and when I came back, it was no more. And that's what you see here, where I go to the fort icon, and it's just a cache. Seven Cities of Gold was indeed ahead of its time in many important ways. For example, it's a exploration-focused game that takes place in an enormous open world. It's a game that, when you play, creates its own narrative. And it's a game that allows the player to make moral choices that have real consequences. These are all elements that modern game reviewers totally freak out over, yet Seven Cities of Gold was doing it in 1984. This is literally 30 years ago. To understand how early that is, the NES in America wouldn't be released for another couple years. So this game is extremely impressive for the era in which it came out, and it's still a very playable simulation today. It actually lives up to a gameplay ideal that I have, which is that I feel like games really should be simple on the surface and complicated below the surface. In some ways, that design philosophy is more in line with what you'd see on a console, where a simple interface is a necessity. You know, I feel like people often confuse depth with surface depth. You know, you'll have these games that have a million different unit types, they have a bunch of different controls, and the balance just isn't quite there. But people consider them to be deep because they present the user with a bunch of options right there, you know, in front of their face. Whereas Seven Cities of Gold looks very simple, but once you get into it, you realize that there's so much more going on in this game than you initially realized. And it's a game that sucks me right in every time I boot it up. You know, every time I load up Seven Cities of Gold, I end up playing way longer than I originally bargained for. So I think it's a really compelling game even in 2014. And if that's not enough, it actually comes with a really cool map generator that makes really coherent maps where it kind of has these virtual tectonic plates that it keeps track of and then creates mountain ranges where they hit and stuff like that. So you wind up with these maps that are very true to life. You know, they're not just a bunch of random junk. It does come with a map of the world, though, by default. You know, if you'll notice, I'm returning home with a ton of men, food, and goods. I really could have stayed out there longer and gotten more gold, so now I'm going to go and get scolded by the King and Queen of Spain. Surprise, surprise, my rating is poor. Well, that's cool. I'll just go in here into the pub and get smashed and save my game. Yeah, you actually have to take your ship back to Europe to save the game, so the game kind of assumes you're going to be playing it for a while. So there you go, that's Seven Cities of Gold, one of those Commodore 64 classics that I really recommend to anybody interested in history from this era, or strategy games, or anything like that. And, like Oregon Trail, it also makes a great educational game in addition to just playing well. Okay, well, thanks for watching Cool and Unusual Games, and I'll see you next time.